אסען אל הגרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם אדוני, עושה שמיים וארץ. אל ייתן למות רגלך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן, שומר ישראל. אדוני שומרך, אדוני צלך, עליית ימינך. יומם כשמש לא יכך, וירח בלילה. אדוני שמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד העולם.
כל אומר קרא ואמר מה אקרא, כל הבשר חציר וכל חסדו כציץ השדה, יבש חציר נובל ציץ, כי ruach Adonai nashva bo. A voice says, cry out. But I ask, what shall I cry? All flesh is like grass. All of its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers and the flower fades when a wind from God blows upon it. Surely, therefore, people are like grass. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of God endures forever. LeDavid mizmor l'Adonai haaretz umloa tevel v'yoshveva ki hu al yamim yisada v'al nehoret yichoneneha. The earth is the Lord's with all of its fullness. The world is the Lord's with all of its inhabitants. Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in the holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart. He will receive a blessing from the Lord and a just reward from the God of deliverance. Steve Hochman wasn't controversial. Steve wasn't controversial. Steve wasn't provocative. Steve wasn't an attention getter. I don't know if he was considered cool in high school. I don't know if he was considered cool 20 years out of high school. But I sure know that he did a lot of cool things. I want to give you a list of the things that Steve did that were cool. He had 3 kids who were well educated, well thought of, successful, loving, caring, thoughtful people. That is cool. He was married for, did I get it right, 56 and a half years? That's cool. And to the same person. That's even more cool. He spent his time with his family at the dinner table at 6 p.m. And at whatever event his kids and his grandkids were in, he showed up. He showed up. That is cool. One of the grandkids was saying when he would get there early with the team, he'd already find his granddad there already because he got there so early. Can you imagine that, coming early for the team and the grandpa's already there? That's cool. That is so cool. He was close to his parents. And I want to offer condolences to Linda, his sister. He took care of his parents as they grew older. He brought his father in to live in the house. That is cool. And it was your house too, Renee. And of course you said yes, because that's the coolest thing somebody can do today. And he treated your parents with respect. He gave your mother plenty of attention in her later years. I know, try to include Judah, your mom. And you know, if we don't realize that these are the coolest and most important things to do in your life, then we no longer have any idea what cool really means. Renee, your kids never heard you two yell, never heard you speaking with disrespect, didn't know about disagreements. That's impossible. But it wasn't impossible because you two made it possible. You made it their reality. You know, the home is where a child learns about what's possible in life. They may not all reach it, but they know it's possible. It becomes the gold standard. And they learned it from you and Steve. And that is cool. And they saw you taking care of him. They saw you giving yourself to the task of caring for him. And you didn't see it as a task. It was the next step of life. Boy, do we have the wrong idea of what is cool. We think it's a blonde leaning against a brand new car in a commercial with a drink in her hand. No, absolutely wrong. It's a husband and wife living in harmony and going all out for each other and for their family in sickness and in health. That is cool. And the grandkids who got a kick out of the fact that their granddad really wanted to know the details of their lives and was interested in about all the details of what you were doing, he showed up for you in body and in spirit. And you knew, Renee, from the beginning that he was kind to others. And that trait, that good heart, that never left him. He had an amazing memory. He remembered details, sports trivia, championships of the Indians. Well, there weren't that too many of those, but he had a terrific memory for the details of life. He was the one the kids went to often for homework advice because he had a good mind as well as a good heart. He usually had an easy smile on his face, ready to have a conversation, ready to sit down and talk. Sometimes his jokes were funny, sometimes they were not funny, but he was real. He was real. He liked that about dentistry, to talk to the clients. He liked that in day-to-day life, to schmooze with people. Friends would be welcomed into the house for dinner. If he knew of someone who was between things in life, a bit unsettled, they'd be at your house. He had a terrific work ethic. He put in the hours, beginning in junior high school, he needed to work. He once told me about a deli he worked at in high school. He had a lot of memories of that. At one point, he had his poker night and he had his bridge, but you knew that he would always rather be with you. He'd always want to be with his family. Daily dinners at your dining room table or kitchen table were a chance for everyone to go through the day. Not, hey, what'd you do today? Nothing. This was an oral diary that you each participated in from each member of the household. And after devoting yourselves to your kids as they grew up, Renee, you and Steve found meaningful and wonderful ways to enjoy life as empty nesters. You traveled, you went to France and London and Rome, and you continued to take care of each other and loved being grandparents. I know, it's not very controversial. It's not very provocative. Sorry. You know, I don't know about you, but I've grown really weary of controversy. I've really gotten tired of provocative. Controversy, you can get that every day on your daily news. In fact, you can buy it. You can buy a little controversy. This is special. This you can't buy. This is priceless. Steve never tried to hurt a soul. And as you raise your own families, I think the three of you and your partners realize that the values and the supportive nature of your father, of both your parents, the steady and consistent commitment, it's precious, it's priceless, and yes, it's cool. I know you said on trips, family trips, he would always have his itinerary in his back pocket. It's stuffed in, halfway out, because he's very organized. You want to stay on plan. He had a strict itinerary. I want you to know the itinerary Steve had went beyond any one trip. And you were all on it, all the days of your life. And Renee, your first date, well, was him shooting golf balls and you watching. It got better. His itinerary with you was full, and you two kept your promises to each other, to care and be cared about, and to absolutely devote yourselves to each other, even to his final days, with your actions and the actions of your family, your kids, nothing short of heroic. He lived with a good name, and he died with a good name. I'm going to call on members of the family. I think Todd and Darcy.
My sister wants me to let you know she's just here for support. So, my dad at one point was a betting man, and I bet he would bet on us to be able to get through this. But he also gave up betting for a reason. So here goes. It is times like this that we speak about mortality and think about eternity, as well as the connection to the soul, the spiritual or immaterial part of a human regarded as immortal. Dad, you are the best soul. My dad was born to Solon Ann Hochman on August 17, 1943. He spent the first 10 years of his life in East Cleveland in an apartment on Glenmont and Superior near Rockefeller Park. It's my understanding that they spent Sundays together with the family, playing, going to the park, playing baseball, as my dad did for hours on end. At 10, my father relocated to Shaker, where my aunt explains that he fit in, with the exception of he was just a huge kid and bigger than everyone else. My aunt tells a story that he actually had to take his birth certificate to the Heights movie theater so he could get the childhood discount. My dad had an impeccable work ethic. He had job experience dating back to 8 to 10 years where he set pins at a bowling alley, worked as a paper boy, and he worked 40 hours a week in the deli through his high school and spent summer months working even more. He would do what he had to do to support him and his family, a trend that would continue throughout his life. He loved sports. My Aunt Linda also tells me that my grandparents were a little bit ahead of their time with contact sports, and when my dad asked to play football, they gave him a tuba and said, play in the band. My dad worked his magic and he was able to play both tuba, but he was also required to take off his pads and play the tuba with the band at halftime. My dad went to the University of Cincinnati, where he worked as a sports writer and editor for the paper, covering the end of the Oscar Robertson era and 2 basketball national championships. He was then accepted into the Ohio State University College of Dentistry and left college early to pursue his career as a dentist. Throughout college and dental school, he worked at a drugstore, steel mill, and even a playground monitor, and was recruited to be a high school football or a children's football coach. My dad's life truly began a new beginning on April 4, 1967, when Joyce set him up on a blind date with Renee Garson. The date consisted with my mom watching him hit golf balls and ended with Baskin Robbins. 6 months later, they were engaged and they were married on June 24, 1968. As a family man, the golf game quickly faded from his life, but the ice cream never did. A true favorite to the very end. My mom and dad began their 56-year journey in life, and like ice cream, it was sweet. For 56 years, my dad carried the wedding announcement and wedding picture in his wallet, and it remains there to this day. A few weeks ago, I reached out to some close to my dad and asked them for some thoughts and memories. The responses amazed me. Not the content, but rather the consistency. The memories were vast, some happy, some sad, some exciting, some boring, some just better left unsaid. But all of them too many to share. Every single one of those memories included my dad with my mom together. My dad served as a lieutenant and a dentist in the U.S. Navy stationed in Norfolk prior to moving back to Cleveland. He touched many lives as a dentist and helped many people through his career, but he did not let his career define him. Eric was born in 1970, myself 1973, and Darcy 1975. My dad's life was selflessly, devotedly lived for his family. He and my mom, of course, provided the structure, support, love, leadership, and created an environment that, in my eyes, was a childhood utopia. He would push us, but with love and support, and his children all know why. He was a strong-willed man, and there were rules to follow, but he also encouraged us to live our lives to the fullest. He at times forced his will upon us and into us, and for that we are blessed. So many wonderful childhood memories with Dad and Mom. First memories were joy, laughter, fun, and love. Road trips were entertaining as we were often had to be up by 4 a.m. to beat the rush, but he always had the fresh Amy Joy donuts in the car, and he always had to drive while my mom led the license plate game or all those songs. In the morning, my dad was present at breakfast every school day morning. He would be present at all games and all events and most practices. 6 p.m. dinner was a must, as was completion of homework immediately after. Evening hours, if not at an event together, were spent hanging out watching TV. My dad was innovative. He created remote controls out of us before they truly existed. My dad made sure that he was always part of our lives and our community. He gave up his time to run the boosters, concession stands, July 4th games. He was selfless, putting us before himself, ensuring that we had opportunities in life that are not guaranteed. My dad also loved his grandchildren. He cherished each and every interaction with Cameron, Jordan, Sam, Ari, Elijah, and Lydia. He did everything to ensure that he had time with us even after we had grown. He insisted on a family trip to Lake Tahoe for his 60th birthday, truly not to celebrate him, but rather just to be together as a family. As committed as my dad was to his nuclear family, he was always there for all family. My dad was truly always there. When I inquired about memories, responses consistently mentioned that my dad was always present. He went above and beyond for family. He made it to all family events and welcomed all family at all times. He made sure that everyone was comfortable and all their needs were met. Most of the time. My dad was an avid Buckeye fan, and there were some family members that chose to go to that school up north. And my dad also went above and beyond to let him know where that team stood in his mind. My dad loved family gatherings, especially appreciated family dinners. I spent many nights with my dad when he was in hospice, and he was not shy to share that his goal was to go home and have more family dinners. With the exceptional care of Darcy and support of my mom, he made it home, and we shared many family dinners the last 6 weeks. My dad was a huge sports fan, according to my mom, especially the ones that his children and grandchildren were playing in. Truly, his affection for sports, I believe, was more than what they stood for. The basic fundamentals, the relationships, the teamwork, the competition. An arena where individuals allow their wills to push them to their full capacities and beyond. Again, my dad was a strong-willed person. The game also created another opportunity to share with family and friends. So many memories with my dad and mom around sporting events, Beechwood soccer and softball, so many rec games, high school football, high school volleyball, Red Right 88, the drive, the fumble, Len Barker's perfect game, Tribe and Browns games at the old municipal stadium, the Buckeyes, the January 1st bowl game festivities and the cold cut spreads that would be put out, the 1981 NBA All-Star game in Richfield, the 2007 Indians versus Red Sox ACLS game, the 22-game winning streak in 2017, just before he became ill for the first time. The memories go on, but there are two sporting events that sporting memories that truly will always burn in my mind. In his later years, my dad lost his vision. You would walk in their house on any afternoon, and there was inevitably a sporting event on, with my mom and dad watching, and my mom narrating every play. We had the opportunity to spend January 10, 2025 with my family and Darcy watching the Ohio State versus Texas game in his bedroom. The excitement, the moment, what it meant to him as he was starting to go through his decline. The importance of sports are the lessons, relationships, teamwork, competition, arena to impose your will, as well as the memories created. And my dad understood that. My dad was a great son and son-in-law. Obviously, I cannot speak for my Grandma Ann, my Papa Basal, my Grandma Esther, Papa Barney, but I can tell you what I and others observed. My Grandma Ann was diagnosed with cancer in 1973. My dad would do anything for her, and we would visit her every Sunday, whether that be at Mount Sinai Hospital or their home at 3554 Redham. My dad would help my grandma service peanut butter and jelly sandwiches outside around the old elm stump and would listen to the Indians games on the old transistor radio back on the sun porch with my Papa Sal. After my grandma passed, he spent every Sunday visiting Papa Sal. When Papa Sal became ill, my dad flew out to California to bring him home to our house so that my dad and Mom could provide him the care he needed while in hospice. He respected and cared for my Papa Barney in so many different ways. My dad provided care for Grandma Esther after my grandfather's passing and toward the end of her life. My dad cared for everyone and also stated that he had no favorites. But the care he provided for Grandma Esther was special and noticed by all. Towards the end of his life, he appreciated even more the care provided him by my mother as she enabled him to get the extra time and years with family, especially his grandchildren. My dad was a wonderful person with great moral values. He lived his life with will and true love for others. He was a family man, and it was clear that he lived for his family. My dad is the best soul. My dad was a man of lists. He kept lists for everything. He had lists to check his list. He had all over the place. Dad, you checked every box on every list. You may not have made it as a tuba player and got to dot the I in Script, Ohio, but rest assured, you dotted the I in life. It is at this sad moment that my dad's soul and will unite, ensuring a powerful external force that will be with us, for us, and behind us at all future moments. Thanks for all you've done, continue to do, and will do. We love you, Dad.
Ari and Sam?
Lacrosse was a very difficult sport for Ari and I to pick up in high school because of its fast-paced nature and all the obscure rules that the sport has. and it's safe to say that any first-time viewer of a game would be completely and utterly confused as to what was going on until the ball went in either goal. One thing we will always remember about Papa Steve was the importance he placed on being present. When Ari and I were in high school, Papa Steve started experiencing trouble with his eyesight. Papa Steve never understood the sport of lacrosse and couldn't even see us playing during games, but that never stopped him from showing up. And I think this really speaks volumes to the man that our grandfather was. There was no one more important to him than family. Even in his poor health, Papa Steve ensured that he was present at all of our school and sporting events. His consistency and presence is the reason why both Ari and I will always have fond memories of our Papa.
As much as Papa Steve loved coming to our lacrosse games, I think he enjoyed my soccer games more. This may or may not have been because I was the only person he could see on the field wearing a bright neon goalie uniform. Papa Steve never followed professional soccer until he realized it was a bonding opportunity to have with me. Every time I went over to my grandparents' house, I remember sitting down next to Papa while he was in the spot that only he could sit in and talking about professional soccer. I didn't know much about professional soccer myself, but it meant so much to me that he cared enough to start following the sport for the sole purpose of being able to talk about it with me. My grandfather was such a caring man. Although he enjoyed talking sports with me and my brother, he cared much more about what was going on in our lives. Whether it was sitting down at a booth at yours truly and talking about a new girl I met at school, or telling him about what classes I'm currently taking, while he was eating his early bird special at Hyde Park. He always showed such an interest in what I was saying.
As I continue to grow older and hopefully start a family of my own, I'll always have Papa's values to instill in my life. He taught me the importance of presence, the value of being close with family, and above all, how impactful you can be on someone's life by just caring. Papa Steve was a role model for me as I grew up, and I hope to be the kind of man that he was one day.
Stuart? Well, beautiful remarks, and it's about time someone told the truth about Steve. I'm the brother-in-law. Steve Hochman was my brother-in-law for 56 plus years. Renee started bringing me around in 1967, but I don't get brother-in-law credit for time served before marriage. Steve was a worker. He asked nothing of anyone and earned everything that was provided to him. He worked part-time at Sal's Delicatessen on Chagrin, and some of this, I apologize, will be redundant, but we didn't coordinate. While attending Shaker Heights High School, this would become great training for Steve's dental career, as he learned not to slice his fingers while making sandwiches, and his trademark specialty of deli trees, certainly a transferable skill for a dentist. Steve's deli trays making skills were legendary and utilized by all of our families for many years as he provided the party trays for our numerous occasions. Steve attended the University of Cincinnati, and because of his love of sports, he became the sports editor for the college newspaper. After 3 years of undergrad, he was admitted to the Ohio State College of Dentistry, and while in dental school, he enlisted in the Navy, and the day after, he married my sister Renee on June 24th, 1968. He took her on a beautiful honeymoon drive to Norfolk, Virginia, where he was commissioned as a lieutenant and commenced his dental career while Renee was commissioned as a POW. For those of you with an interest in military matters, let me give you some perspective. Naval Station Norfolk wasn't just big. It was the largest naval station in the world, home to the U.S. Navy's Atlantic Fleet. This place was massive. I know because I visited Renee and Steve once in August of 1968, and Steve took me to, I'm laughing because it's true, And Steve took me to the base PX, which was the size of a small city. He loved that PX. Did I tell you that Steve loved a bargain? He had found his second home in that PX. Steve was honorably discharged in 1970 and commenced his dental career in Cleveland and soon purchased his practice in Shaker Heights at Warrensville and Farnsley. Steve and Renee raised three incredible kids. There must have been something extraordinary in the water at the Hochman household, since all three of their children became medical doctors. And as if three doctors weren't enough, Darcy's marriage to Judah brought yet another physician into the family. With Eric's wife, Kim, Todd's wife, Shelley, and Darcy's husband, Judah, their families produced grandchildren, 6 grandchildren, Cameron, Jordan, Sam, Ari, Elijah, and the very beautiful and lovely Lydia, the Hochman's family's first girl. Along with being a hard worker, Steve was a helper. He was always a willing volunteer and participant in whatever the occasion might require. You could count on Steve, and I sincerely believe he liked to be needed and useful. He was that guy. I especially appreciated the way he took care of my parents when their health and strength began to falter. You could always count on Steve. In the last years of my mother's life, Renee and Steve took our mother into their home when she was not able to handle her personal affairs. He never complained about the added burden to his life because he was that guy. I said that Steve was a worker and a helper, but he was also deeply religious. He always believed that the Browns could win. To Steve, there was always some reason or unavoidable misfortune that prevented the team from achieving its goal of not being terrible. Steve was the consummate booster, talking about some obscure draft choice that was going to turn the tide for the Browns and bring them to glory. And to paraphrase Winston Churchill, his belief was wrapped in a fantasy inside a delusion. Arguing with Steve about sports was akin to playing chess with a grandmaster. He was 10 moves ahead of you, looking at every conceivable angle and missing my obvious point. They stink. But he was that guy. He had faith. I have one huge regret about Steve that I just learned about yesterday. He played the tuba in his high school band. How was that piece of information kept from me all these years? How cruel that I was deprived of this salient information. What it would have been the most effective and useful as an implement of my Steve Hochman torture toolbox. Every time I was engaged in an argument with Steve, how easy it could have been to have retorted, "Hey, Steve, you may be wrong, but you'll always have the tuba." "Hey, Steve, does Script Ohio ever make you want to grab your tuba and chase a fire truck?" "Hey, Steve, ever think about strapping on a piano and tuba at halftime?" The missed opportunities with Steve and the tuba are simply incalculable. I'm really upset with all of you for not sharing that with me sooner. I have to find out now. Steve was as loyal and dedicated to Renee as she was to him. They were always together, and both were there for every family occasion and event. And I'm not referring to just the big milestones. I'm talking about all the minor moments like birthday parties for 2-year-olds that are forgotten in time, but are the glue that cement family relationships and loyalty and commitment to being there. Steve had many gifts, but of all of his blessings, Renee Garson Hochman was his greatest one. I'm certain he had no idea what he had won at the time of his wedding, but I'm certain that Steve in time came to appreciate that he'd won the lottery with his life mate Renee. If there's an award for caretaking, they will have to name it after my sister. There's a unanimous consensus in the family that Steve was provided with an additional 6 years of life because of Renee's love, devotion, care, and attention regarding his difficult medical needs. Renee literally, and I say literally, broke her back taking care of him these last months. She wears a brace from the neck to her waist. Not today. Why? I don't know. And has suffered enormous pain herself while attending to Steve. So Renee, we took a vote, and for the rest of your life, you are now required to take care of yourself and attempt to do something that is completely counterintuitive to you and your nature. Put yourself first. You've done enough. And by the way, Steve concurs. Dr. Stephen Neil Hochman lived a life filled with meaning and purpose. His memory will always be a blessing to those who knew, appreciated, and loved him because he was that guy. You will be missed, Steve. Alav HaShalom.
Let's rise, everyone.
You got the name.
Yeah. Israel ben Shlomo Bechana. He really milked that too, but. El malei rachamim shochayna b'hamramim hametzemenoch hanechonam tachat kanefei ashkinam b'mahalot kedoshim adhorim כזוהר גרקי המזהירים את נשמת ישראל בן שלמה וחנה שגלח לעולמו בגן עדן תחי מנוחתו הנבא על הרחמים אז תראהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים ותצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני ונחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר Amen.
May we remember all of the worthy deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life. May he rest in peace. And we all say Amen. Let's be seated. We offer our condolences to the family, to Renee, to Eric and Kim, Todd and Shelley, Darcy and Judah, Cameron, Jordan, Samuel, Ari, Elijah, and Lydia, to Linda and Mike, to Stuart and Cheryl, Nancy and Dan, and Nancy and Reagan. The family will be receiving visitors at the Friedman Residence in Solon, 32340 Woodsdale Lane. Again, 32340 Woodsdale Lane in Solon, beginning today following the burial portion of the service. Beginning today following the burial until 8 p.m. tonight. Tomorrow, again, 2 to 4 p.m. and 6 to 8 p.m. We're now going to pause for a moment to arrange the processional at the Bet Olam Cemetery. Please remain in your seats for just a moment. The pallbearers should come forward. עשה לרעהו רעה, וחרפה לא נשא על קרובו. יצא בעיניו נימס, את ירא אדוני יכבד, נשבע להרע ולא ימיר, כספו לא נתן בנשק, שוחד על נקי לא לקח, אלא לא ימות לעולם.